Welcome to Protea Conversations, the podcast where leadership in business and accounting isn't just discussed, it's explored. I'm your host, Zane Stevens, and thank you for joining me as we delve into the minds of some of the most influential leaders in the industry. Our journey is one of discovery, from unraveling the unique stories that shaped our guest careers to invaluable advice that fueled their success. We're here to provide you with simple, actionable advice to accelerate your career and personal growth. Whether you're a budding professional or a seasoned executive, these conversations are designed to offer insight and perspectives that resonate with everyone. So tune in, engage, and be inspired as we build better leaders together. Welcome to Protea Conversations. Today, my guest is Chris Williams. Chris Williams is the CEO of System 6, a leading fully remote outsourced accounting firm that serves clients across the United States. With a background in finance, including investment banking and private equity, Chris brings a wealth of experience in strategic growth and operational excellence. Since acquiring System 6 in 2021, Chris has shown the ability to increase companies' revenue while fostering a workplace culture centered on collaboration and client satisfaction. A graduate of Stanford University, Chris's expertise spans small business acquisitions and scaling service-based businesses. His leadership emphasizes creating exceptional experiences for both his team and his clients. Chris is a well-known contributor and speaker in the accounting industry, where he's had a positive effect on the way people think about the business of accounting. Beyond his professional achievements, Chris loves being with family, going for runs, working on his golf game. Chris, welcome to Protea Conversations.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, Zane. Appreciate all the friendship we've had over the last couple of years, and look forward to the conversation today. We've got a newborn at home, so I will say how I like to spend my time has definitely changed in the last 5 weeks. But we're super happy and everyone's healthy, which is all you can ask for at 5 weeks.
Well, congratulations on that. As somebody that's been through that before, having kids, I had a November baby, so I know how it can be during this time of the year to have a newborn at home. So
yeah,
good luck with that one.
Yeah,
but it is interesting. Yeah, it's been interesting because I had a professional relationship with System 6 before you came and acquired them. And that's sort of how we met, right? You reached out to what would have been referral partners to the company at that time and said, hey, I just want to meet you, talk to you, get to know you. And we had lunch. It was pretty interesting. I was like, cool, nice new person. This would be nice to continue to work. You know, a great place for me to send referrals that are outside of the wine space. And in sort of 3.5 years, I think it's developed beyond just a professional relationship. And there's definitely a professional friendship, which I appreciate. And I always appreciate the time we take to talk about business and sort of a good sounding board sometimes to just share our frustrations and challenges and a safe space to sort of give us a chance to rethink about what we're doing for our own businesses.
Yeah, it's right back at you. I mean, I think, it's not all up and to the right, even if that's the, long-term trend. Like it's hard in the moment. And I think, I appreciate being able to talk about the realities of some of this stuff. And hopefully in today's conversation, we'll share some of that with the audience, which is like, look, even though we've both got businesses that I think at a high level, we'd say are successful and we're super happy with, like, there's always peaks and valleys along the way. And there's always stuff, that we want to get better at. And I think it's good for people to hear that.
No, for sure. I mean, it's the reality of life and business is that it's not just a straight line, right? You're going to have to work through the ups and downs, and having people around to do that together is helpful. Having community around you makes a big difference, which I'm sure you'll find out with the newborn at home. Community becomes ultra important.
Yep. So it takes a village, right?
Yeah. Chris, I think what people find really interesting is I've had guests here that were accountants and then went to a second career. You, on the other hand, are not an accountant at all.
Nope.
but are running a very successful accounting practice.
Yep.
So before we even get into that side of it, which is super interesting, I would just like to learn more about the path that Chris took to get here.
Totally.
Because for me, it's pretty interesting. One, you're a pretty smart guy.
I don't know
Brown University and then Stanford. They don't just let anybody in. So
I can kind of walk through the background, and it's definitely, different for sure. I think you can, just a reminder, I think there's a famous Steve Jobs speech about this, like, in 2020 hindsight, you can always kind of like paint this really clean story. But in the reality, in the moment, a lot of these decisions I made were kind of like, you just got to pick one path or another and just pick where your gut is. And then, in hindsight, you paint this great story, but just a reminder to everyone, it's not all like, super planned and organized ahead of time. You are sometimes making gut decisions. So yeah, my short sort of background is career in finance coming out of college. I studied math and econ. That's a pretty normal pipeline into banking. Went from there, moved out to California to investing at a private equity firm. Loved my time there, honestly. And, as I get to later parts of my journey here, like thought long and hard about that being where I went back after grad school, but spent 3 years there and then kind of was like, hey, I'm in my late 20s. I've been kind of doing one thing for 5-6 years, which is working in finance. Like if I have the opportunity to go to grad school, let me apply to some. And if I get in, like, why wouldn't I take a couple years to sort of step back from my current path and see what else is out there and really pick the career versus kind of the job. So that's really what took me to business school. And, at business school, I came in looking for, hey, like, what's a way for me to get into more of the day-to-day results of business? In an investing role, over time, you buy companies and you sit on the board and you certainly make some key calls, who's the CEO, et cetera, that's going to like determine the success of the business, but you're a level removed from it. I'm a competitive person, kind of wanted to be more like in the results. So my kind of, as I get to grad school, hey, like what could I do that would get me closer to being the one who's delivering results? And then I get to business school and what's become a pretty popular path, and even more so, I think over the next decade, is like, hey, there are all these great small businesses out there in the United States run by business owners in their 50s or 60s who want to sell them. Like that's just what the demographic story is of small businesses in America. And, there's a lot of kind of young, hungry, entrepreneurially oriented folks that are like, instead of doing a startup, what if I can go find one of these good, steady small businesses, become kind of the retirement solution for the owner, buy it from them. Step one is kind of maintain it. And then step two is, okay, how can I grow it and take it to the next level? It's not about buying a distressed business. It's about there's a great small business owner that built a great business. They're ready to retire. They don't want to sell to private equity. They don't have a son or daughter to pass it on to, and you can kind of present yourself as, hey, I'm young, hungry, and entrepreneurial, just like you were one day 20 years ago. I'd love to buy your business and take it to the next level. There's a whole infrastructure around this. Search funds is a term. There's lots of other investors, accelerators, lots of different sort of paths. Now there's courses you can pay for online that teach you how to do this. But the general thing I did is I wanted to do something entrepreneurial. I wanted to bet on myself. I didn't have a great startup idea. So I discovered this path of, hey, let me go buy a small business and try and grow it. And, I looked for a variety of businesses, spent about a year looking at different industries and stumbled on outsourced accounting. I had a couple of minority investors who had some experience in the space and vocalized it as kind of a good place to own and try and grow a business, and sent System 6, Jeremy, the owner, a cold email among many accounting firm owners I emailed. And, he was one of the ones that responded. And 6 months later, we put a deal together. So, lots of decisions along that path, but that's the short. The one thing I really like to emphasize on that path is kind of the best career advice I ever got, which is ultimately why I went down this path of trying to go buy a small business, was, when you get to these forks in the road in your career or in your life, even like, you're choosing two paths, assume each is going to be really successful, and then like, which one gives you more energy? Because life is not just about like succeeding and choosing something that you can succeed in, but also like you need to be energized to actually achieve the success in that path. And that was good advice I got. It was like, you can go back into finance and have a career in investing, make a ton of money, or you can go buy a small business, try and grow it, make it medium, maybe not make as much money, but still do well financially. And I looked at those two paths and I was just like building something and growing it. No disrespect to finance. I've got a lot of friends there. Some days I still think about it, but like buy a small business and grow it gave me energy. And that was ultimately my decision. That's what made the decision for me.
Yeah, that is great advice. I think we're so polarizing in society nowadays that it is success or failure. But most of the time there is multiple paths, and 9 out of 10 of them are probably going to lead to success in some form, shape. And that's great advice. Just do the one that energizes you the most. And if it doesn't work out, now there will be a new set of paths in front of us, and then we have to make that same decision again. And between those two paths, there were probably 10 other different decisions you had to make as well. So just keep moving forward.
More decisions will come. Exactly. Very few things are permanent. That doesn't mean like go do something stupid. Like becoming a professional basketball player was not on my, decision criteria. Like I wasn't going to assume that I was going to be successful at that. So you have to be realistic, but within the bounds. I think that was really good advice I got.
Yeah, no, I love that. I'm definitely clipping that one for the shorts. So that's great advice.
Good.
A couple of questions from that. One, I knew there were people out there that went out and bought businesses from retiring people, but I didn't really quite understand that it's an ecosystem. So can you touch on that a little bit more?
Yeah, and I think that's really ballooned. I don't know, probably in the last 5-7 years. But the basic idea is, and I saw it play out in System 6, and I've seen it play out time and time again. Is like often you've got a small business owner that's built a great business. They're tired. They've been doing it for a while. They've taken their foot off the gas. They're also like cash flowing a lot from that business often. And they recognize, like, for me to continue to grow, I'm going to have to start reinvesting that cash to build out more of a leadership team, et cetera, et cetera. So maybe they've decided not only are they kind of later in their career and taking the foot off the gas, but they're like, for me to keep growing, I'm going to have to reinvest. And that means less kind of take home for me in the next couple of years. So those kind of dynamics, I think, create an opportunity for a hungry, ambitious, well incentivized person to come in and, put the sort of pedal back on the metal and start trying to grow it aggressively again. So I think that's a big part of the why it works. The ecosystem historically, there's kind of two main paths. There's like kids who sort of learn about this, young adults, young professionals through business school. Like there's always been a cohort of kids coming out of MBA programs across the country. It's really expanded over the last probably 5-7 years, where they're raising some money up front, a couple $100,000 to keep their lights on. They've got student loans, and they're going to go look for businesses that are doing 10, 15, 20, 30 million in revenue, a couple $1 million of earnings. That looks a little bit closer to like a small private equity type transaction. They've got a handful of investors, and that's one tried and true successful path. There's a lot to be said about buying something with scale. And then there's maybe a little bit less structured, some coming out of business schools, some kind of just in general, folks learning about the opportunity to buy a small business who are going to primarily finance that with an SBA loan. There's a pretty beneficial SBA loan program for acquisitions. It's called the 7A program. So that's ultimately the path I went down. I was kind of like, look, I'll put together the capital structure when I find the deal, and the deal I found was smaller, so it lended itself towards the SBA program. So those are kind of the two main paths. There's versions of it, but it's kind of like, hey, if you want to buy bigger businesses, you probably need to raise some money up front. It's going to feel a little more institutional. A lot of benefits with that route. But there's also, hey, if you want to buy a smaller business, kind of like sub 10 million in revenue, you can do it more through the SBA. You're going to have a big loan from the government, which means you can own more of it. It feels a little bit more kind of, less institutional, more on your own. And then I would say, look, there are, on both of those paths, there's investors that focus on that. There's, bankers and lawyers and service providers that focus on those types of buyers. There's courses you can sign up for that you see on LinkedIn all the time and Twitter, just like there's courses probably on how to start a winery. There's courses on how to go buy a small business. So it has really turned into an ecosystem, and there's, obviously some people trying to profit on it, maybe in not the best way, but, business, more and more kids coming out of business school see it as a different path to entrepreneurship versus VC. I think it's just getting more popular because there's more sellers out there as the kind of small business ownership ages.
Yeah, and if you're a business owner and you're sort of thinking about an exit strategy, which you all should be doing from day one, you should add this to the list. I mean, it seems like a great way, especially for a service business. I think this is a great place to sort of come in. I obviously don't know the structure of your deal exactly, but a lot of these deals end up with founders sticking around for a couple of years, being the sort of face, at least for a period of time, to turn over so that the clients all don't just run because they're scared of new ownership. But it is a good way to sort of keep a legacy going and get your buyout because you can't be certain that an employee is going to want to buy it or a family member wants to take out. And even though there's a ton of private equity money going around, it's not that easy to get that money. They're looking for very specific types of accounting businesses right now, service businesses. So the option is there, but this seems like a much more accessible route for most people.
Yeah, and I think, it's ultimately about like, what are you solving for in your exit? Like, yeah, this path, it's never someone who's going to be able to pay as much as a private equity firm or, a bigger, if we talk about accounting, you can sell to private equity or you can go sell to CBIZ or any kind of the large accounting firms that are doing acquisitions. Those folks are always going to be able to pay more, but I think the small business owner often feels like they want someone, like you said, to protect their legacy, to care for it. Of course, we've made a ton of changes. The business looks different now than it did when I bought it, but there's a little bit less of like, I think, a quick rip the Band-Aid because you sold it to one person who kind of can't afford to do that. Like they need to come in and stabilize and make sure things stay the same versus you sell to a big machine and they can make those changes much faster. So yeah, it's one of several paths. I will say, sure, private equity like probably has a higher standard in terms of metrics they're looking for and how much they're going to be willing to pay. But if you don't have a sellable business and you haven't done the right things to make it sellable, like don't count on this as being your bailout. Every buyer, even if they're an individual one, kind of like me, is still looking for some important things so that you feel like the business can continue after the owner leaves.
Yeah, I think it's critical. Set yourself up for success if you want any of these options to be available to you. So that is important in getting the structures in place.
And the good thing is like all those decisions, I mean, we can talk about it if you want, but it's all stuff that also like helps your business before you sell it anyways. The core of it is, remove yourself from first and foremost, sort of the day-to-day delivery of service, second, remove yourself from kind of core growth and really, have yourself in the organization as someone who's strategic, big picture stuff. Like that's a much more sellable business than if, you run a tax practice and you're still signing 50% of the returns.
Yeah, totally get it. I mean, you touched on that, the outsourced accounting space made a lot of sense, but what really attracted you to the space?
Yeah, I mean, so you think about like, look, there's successful businesses all over the country in all kinds of different industries. You got to think about my background, which is like, and my story, which is like, I'm coming into a business like literally with zero experience running that business. I don't know anybody, the team, I don't know any of the clients. So kind of the first and most important thing I was looking for is a business that is kind of stable and inherently going to continue. Like if I bought a business with a bunch of chunky project revenue, like a construction business, you can make a bunch of money in that, but all of a sudden there's a new owner and the projects that go up 6 months from now, they might not hire us because they don't know me from anyone. So the recurring nature of the business, of sort of day-to-day accounting that we're in, that was definitely the most attractive thing. Like our clients are on subscription payments. They pay us, they have contracts they can get out of, but I knew that the day I came in, all the revenue was still going to be there at least for the next couple of months. So that was, I think, by far the most important thing, quality of revenue, so to speak, recurring revenue. The second thing was like, you want to be in a good industry. When you buy a small business, rising tide lifts all boats. There's only so much you as the operator can really do. So I felt like accounting is a critical service. People don't just shut off their accountants and bookkeepers when the economy has challenges. So not only is it recurring from a contract basis, but it's a kind of foundational mission critical service that's going to continue. And then, the industry was growing. There's all these tailwinds from COVID of people starting to take their bookkeeping and be willing to have it done by somebody remotely. You've got all these small businesses on QuickBooks Desktop. As they start to modernize, they're going to move to QBO. So now you've got all these more small businesses that are going to be potential customers of ours. So I felt like recurring revenue, kind of mission critical industry, growing industry, and that was a lot to make it super attractive. There's threats. We have technology and AI. That's a real threat. But I also see opportunities in that as well. Yeah, there's more things, but the core of it was like good industry, good revenue model, which allows me as kind of a rookie coming in to not have a business that's going to fall off the cliff day one.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, coming out of that COVID period of time as well, it was highlighted that, hey, accounting is an essential service. So that gives you, if the government is telling you need your accountant, that's a pretty good say that's going to be around for a bit, even if the world is changing in terms of accounting and there is these threats of technology to our service offering. But I know we've spoken about this before, and it's more using it as an opportunity to create better service offerings, especially in a subscription model, which you guys have.
Yeah. I mean, I think, look, there's on the AI stuff, like there's a world, 10 years from now, 7 years from now, I don't know, where maybe it really is doing a lot of our work and maybe our businesses need to look very different. But I know in the short term, there's a ton of sort of opportunity for us to be more efficient with it. And then we can spend less time doing kind of like, not fun data cleanup and more time actually helping our clients.
And we're constantly adjusting. From our conversations, I know that the business that you bought and the business you have today are two very different businesses, even though they effectively give the same service. Walk me through that process of how you've had to adjust over the 3.5 years that you've been running the company.
Yeah. And I think, some parts are super different, but the parts that are, I think for us, the thing that ultimately makes us successful is our culture and our people. Our business is a people business. Like the product we deliver is really our people. So, we've definitely changed a lot, which I'll get into, but I have tried to keep what I felt like was a very positive culture when I got here. One where we're kind of focused first on making sure our employees have a good experience. I've definitely tried to maintain that because I really believe, and I know you do too, like if we grind our employees out, and make this not a good place to work, they're going to leave and then we're not going to persist as a business. But yeah, I would say basically our journey has been, it's all tied to growth. So I sort of came in and, started spending more time on growth than Jeremy had. And Jeremy is a good friend of mine. Like he would tell you, he had 4 kids, taking his foot off the gas, not taking as many sales calls. So I did not come in and discover a bunch of problems in System 6. Like I think changes happen naturally over time, but my main focus out of the gate was, okay, how do we grow this thing more? Because I have ambitions, I want to run a bigger business, et cetera. And then all of the changes that we've had, I would say in the last 3.5 years came from that. There weren't a ton of problems that I saw in the business that we had to fix day one. It was more just as we grew, then it created challenges that we've worked through and continue to work through. So I would say a couple of the things that are very different for us. One, we have had to create a leadership team. We're kind of double in size. We're 20 people when I bought the business. We're 40 people now. So, that means we have sort of more administrative stuff that we need to do. Like we had someone kind of part-time in HR. Now she's full-time in HR. I did sales for a lot of that journey, but pretty quickly. And I wish I'd done it earlier. I hired a salesperson because I was getting bogged down in sales and I was creating backlogs. So we now have a head of sales. We operate with a pod structure. So we have service teams and each of those service teams has a leader, but now we have a head of delivery who sort of sits on top of those team leads. So that's a new position in leadership. We've got a head of operations. So someone who does things like billing and our internal bookkeeping and technology. And then we've got someone in charge of sort of process workflow and technology. That has all really come together, I would say, over the last 18 months as we've been able to afford those positions as we grew. So, there's a big shift for me that comes in that, which is like, I'm no longer just managing people who are doing accounting work. I'm managing, it's kind of like obvious to see if they're doing a good job because they have like day-to-day deliverables. Like, did you close the books on time or not? But now it's like, managing managers is an adjustment certainly of like, hey, you got to set quarterly expectations for folks. What are the metrics they can report out on a weekly basis so you can make sure they're making progress on those goals, and then helping those leaders, especially if you promote them internally, which we've done a lot of, understand that like what we're asking of them now is different than what we were asking of them 2 years ago. And like, they need to grow and they need to evolve. And, that's because, it's not about sort of, hey, what do we want you to do based on your skills? It's kind of like the job is based on what the company needs and you need to do what the job is asking of you. And so that means we've, had to teach some people some new things and help them grow. So that's one kind of big part of our story is creating a leadership team and, me growing into what that looks like as the leader of that team. And I think the other big thing, is a lot of our growth came from changing our kind of core customer. We started a lot more medium-sized businesses where maybe more accrual accounting, less cash, more investor reporting, more consolidated reporting. And we've actually started to we may have gone a little too far there. We've taken on some really big customers that are pretty burdensome for us. And so, maybe we're going to walk that back a little bit and try and get back towards more couple $1 million sort of solo owner small businesses and less of these kind of 10, 15, $20 million more institutional clients that are just, they pay us a lot of money, but they can be harder to serve.
Mm-hmm.
So those are probably, we've had challenges around that. We got these more complicated clients. Can our team serve that? Do they have the skills? Are we staffed with enough capacity for those more complicated clients? I'd say that's where we've had some challenges. And then hiring, hiring is hard. And then especially as we're growing faster, we had to hire a lot faster than we ever did before. And we definitely made some mistakes in that. So recognizing that, if you have a team that's hiring, one person every now and then, and now you're going to ask them to hire a person a month, that's like a total shift. And you need to make sure ultimately that as the owner, I'm doing the right thing to set them up for success and not just say, hey, your workload just kind of doubled, go hire a bunch of people, but all right, are we putting everyone in a position to do that well?
Yeah, it's great. I mean, I take that all in, and my big summary of it would be you started with an accounting business. Now you have a business that provides accounting services.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it, right? There's there's a layer. Yeah, if you have a business that is less than 20 people or whatever, chances are the vast majority of those people are in delivery, and there's just a layer there that doesn't exist to truly make it, kind of a sustainable business where the owner can go on vacation or et cetera, or it can be more sellable, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, you truly, I think, become more of a quote unquote business when there's sort of a management layer in place, but you got to grow to be able to afford that.
Chris, what does your day-to-day look like?
Yeah, so I actually, one thing I've started this year, especially with a newborn, is I'm tracking my time more directly because I'm kind of curious. And now that there's so much more at home that I want to spend time on, I want to make sure I'm spending my time at work on super high value stuff. So I look at it kind of on a weekly basis. I have about 6 direct reports ish. We have 1 leadership meeting a week. So there's, kind of 10 hours a week there of, I would say, kind of recurring one-on-ones with team members, and maybe, a one-off follow-on that needs to happen based on something we're trying to get done, or they're trying to get done and I'm trying to help them with. I do, it fluctuates, but I do a couple hours a week of networking, probably, meetings with other firm owners, either one-on-one, you and I have lunch once a quarter, or I'm in a couple groups that meet once a month. I think that's super helpful for any small business owner to learn how others are doing things. Also, acquisitions is something we look at as a way to grow, and it's a good way for me to build my network, in the industry for when people might want to sell. I'd probably have a couple sort of biz dev calls a week. I'm not doing customer sales calls anymore, but referral partner or, someone who owns 5 businesses and wants to have a general conversation and it makes sense for the CEO to get there. That's in there. I try to keep my email to kind of 1 hour a day. Occasionally there's a fire drill here and there I need to really spend some time on. So that all probably adds up to, I would say, sort of 20 hours a week of sort of recurring one-on-ones or other kind of meetings that happen. And then the rest of the week is spending time. Every quarter I probably have 2 or 3 balls that I'm trying to move forward that are kind of, we run on EOS, so we call them rocks, but strategic projects for the company that really rely on me to push forward. So, right now, some of those are, we bought a small accounting practice in December. So I'm spending a lot of time talking to those customers, working on integration. We are thinking about revamping how we do compensation internally. I'm working on that with our head of people, but I have some stuff I have to own there around kind of data analysis. And then we're trying to get some different sales and marketing channels working this year. So I'm working with a third-party marketing agency. And that stuff kind of probably adds up to, 50% of my time. So I would say half of my time is sort of recurring stuff, and then half of it is allocated to whatever 3-4 projects I'm trying to work on at a time. And I've been super guilty of, instead of keeping it to 3 or 4 projects, I'll keep it to 8, and then I won't get anything done because I'm spread too thin.
Yeah, somebody that just finished reading Traction. That's a big no-no. But you learn the hard way, I guess.
Yeah, as a leader, I definitely like, my mentality on me as a person is like, I'm here to serve the team. And so anything that comes up that they're like, this would be great if we could move it forward, I had a huge bias to say yes, especially like I'm a new owner out of the gate. You're trying to earn trust and respect. So you want to get a ton of shit done. Mm-hmm. But I certainly last year in particular learned that by saying, hey, yeah, I can take on that project for the business, and saying that too many times, I didn't get enough done. So I'm getting more comfortable, like even internally to people on my team, who report directly to me, they'll say, hey, have you made progress on this? And I have to say no, because it's not a priority for me this week. And they have to understand, part of my job is to make sure I spend time on what's most important for the business. And it sometimes might not be that, whatever issue they have might not be that important. And people have to be okay with that.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. So you've been doing this just over 3.5 years. What are the biggest lessons you've learned through the process?
Yeah, I think, this is like, we've all, I guess there's mistakes that we have made as a business that I think, regardless of kind of the ownership story every business makes. And so those are really, like I said, just around when you start to hire faster, making sure you're set up for that, making sure you're hiring for how the business may be changing. We started taking on these more sophisticated customers. Well, let's make sure we hire people that can serve them. So I think there's a lot of good lessons for us there. I think also, like I said earlier, on the, it's great to bring in new customers from a new channel, but make sure you think about, again, like how that's going to impact your business a couple of years from now. Is this customer, it might be a bunch of money. Are they going to require a different level of service that's going to require you to spend more, that's going to decrease your gross margin? Like, just thinking through how changes in the business, how fast you're growing, what type of customers you're bringing on, how that's going to impact things for the next couple of years, and just making sure you're kind of happy with those impacts. But I think probably every business owner goes through that. I think more interesting for me, I think when you're kind of new in an organization, whether it's a promotion or like me, where I bought it, you want to be really deferential and you want to be like really supportive. And I think I'm glad I did that out of the gate, but I also think at some point you have to like make your expectations known. And if you're not vocalizing kind of what you're asking for out of the team or what you want to see out of them, like you're not being fair to them, because then you're just going to be upset when like something doesn't get done. And then they're going to be like, well, I didn't know that's what you were looking for. So I think I definitely, I think more quickly, if I go through something like this, was just sort of in the right way, sort of say, hey, look, these are what expectations have been one thing in the past, but part of my job as a new owner is I want to raise expectations. Mm-hmm. That's how I be better as a business, and like not being afraid to do that earlier on. I think, like again, you want to be deferential, supportive of the team that you have, but your job is to try and help improve the business. And so if that means you want to raise expectations, like you got to do that. I think I was a little slow to start to vocalize some of those things. So that's kind of in my acquisition journey, the big takeaway is just like, speak your mind faster, and if ultimately your expectations don't align with people on the team, like then you'll have to make some changes, but it's better to have to make those changes than like you not speak your mind, and then like that's not a good situation, because then you're not happy with the results.
Yeah, I mean, putting that vision in front of people so they understand where you're going is important. Setting those expectations and holding them accountable to it makes a big difference. And like you say, speak up sooner, right? Because then people understand what they're getting into, and they can choose like, am I staying on the ship or I'm jumping off? Yeah. So I think that's like a good lesson for anybody in management, leadership, any position. Like, make it clear what you want.
Yeah, and we like fortunately haven't necessarily had a bunch of folks that have had to jump off the ship, or I think need to, but even if we did, like it's not that you don't like the person, it's not that you can't treat somebody like super well on the way out, but it's like it's about what the business needs. And if the business is going to have XYZ expectations because you as the owner set them, then like people need to be able to get to those. And yeah, you're the new owner. You're allowed to have new expectations.
Yeah, for sure. And separations aren't always like a bad thing, right? You can have separation because the values don't align. You can have separation because you decide to go a different path in terms of the work level and they just don't meet those expectations or qualifications. Or, they could just be people come in and like, gosh, don't really like your face, so it's time for me to move on, right? Like these things happen all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. Like there's structural turnover in every organization. And
Mm-hmm.
again, I don't want this to sound like, I'm coming in and like want to like, cycle everybody out or wish I had. I just think it's more, I have seen more growth and kind of like our team do better more recently as I have more clearly vocalized my expectations. And I just think that has helped us perform better as an organization. And so I wish I had done that earlier.
100%. If they know what the target is, they can move towards it. If you're not giving them a target, they're just sort of running blind, which is not super helpful.
And you think you don't want to give someone a super aggressive target because you want to be nice to them. And that is important in a business transition. But like, if you're not speaking what your actual expectations, what your actual target is, you actually end up doing worse by the person over the long run.
Yeah, totally agree. A couple of the other things you touched on, hiring people. Remember, if you want to scale, you have to be ready to scale. And that includes your hiring process and having that put down exactly what you're looking for.
Totally.
We don't want to, hire a bunch of lemmings, but at the same time, there's generally probably a good profile of the person that works for your business or the position that you're looking for. And you need to be able to set those expectations early and hire for that position. So I think that's a great point to touch on for anybody trying to grow a business. Hiring is tough. It is brutal, and you have to be as sort of objective as possible in the process. And then you can take, when it comes down to two great candidates, then you can take the one you like the most and use the subjectivity along the line. But if you can stick objectively, that's the best way to scale successfully, I believe.
Totally. Like have a scorecard, get multiple people involved in the process. Try to source some candidates on your own because there's always better people that are kind of out there not looking for a job than just people who are applying. And recognize that, it's a sales job, hiring. So make sure the people you have on it, want that type of role or have that desire to spend some of their time on it. Yeah, I think we think about like our core job is to deliver accounting services. And yes, that is. But like for us as a growing accounting firm, a lot of our core job is to hire well because that's how we deliver accounting services. So just like, it's not an afterthought. It's not something you just like pay a recruiter for, or you just like spend a couple hours on. It's like hiring is a core motion if you're a growing business. And, you need to focus on it as just as much as you focus on profit or as you focus on delivering the widget off the factory correctly. Like you have the most dialed quality control process in the world. Your hiring process should be as good, because otherwise, if you don't have a good hiring process,
what does it even matter then, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the last point was talking about the client, and I love talking about niche, whatever you want to call it, because I'm super ultra niche, right? Like the wine industry, but client size is a niche as well, and trying to set those expectations of what that client looks like.
Yeah.
We all have a niche at the end of the day. Nobody actually serves everybody. That's impossible. And it is setting those expectations and those goals of what the client looks like and stick when you start floating above or, maybe below, those ones are the ones that end up costing you more money, especially on a subscription basis, because you're putting in hours that you just can't recover.
For sure. I mean, I definitely, I have ambitious targets for this business. So I tend to think revenue. I'd say, there's the economic cost of maybe bringing on customers that, are a challenge for you to serve. Like certainly we've had lower margin on a couple of them, but I think, there's the non-economic costs that can be even more, which is we're only like, if I were to say, hey, who are the kind of wrong fit customers that we've brought on over the last couple of years? We're talking about a handful. It's not, we bring 40 clients a year roughly. There's probably 5 or 10 a year that, and now we're getting better at it, that were sort of misfits for us to bring on. But, they create so much more, not just margin challenges, but just stress, et cetera. So, that's something that I've learned, is that it's not just about the revenue and ultimately the margin, but like, what's it going to do to your team? And then, because when you start to really have margin problems, is not if you just have one client that's out of whack, but if that one client burns somebody out and then they leave, now you've got 30 clients that you have a problem with. So yeah, I think, definitely like understanding, upfront, hey, is this do we want to serve this type of client? What's it going to take? Maybe, slowing down out of the gate. Like we just kind of went for those and just started bringing them on real fast. And I think maybe if we had sort of brought on a couple, done it for a year, and then really stepped back and asked ourselves some questions, there's some learning there. And I think the last thing is like, and you get this, like, think about the end industry that you're serving and their journey, because like, even if it's a profitable, great customer, we brought on a bunch of $10 million revenue, high growth, sort of ambitious businesses. And a lot of them got to 20 million in revenue in like 3 years. And so they like naturally started to go in-house because they got big and could build in-house finance teams. And a lot of them we serve freaking fantastically, but there's a structural churn that's going to happen that maybe isn't going to happen for a smaller business. So I know a bunch of people love to serve startups or e-commerce. Like those businesses turn over a lot because they go out of business. So like, think about the end industry you're picking.
Chris, what is your short-term goals for yourself and your business?
Yeah. So I have this, we're about 5 million in revenue now. I want to get us to about 10 in the next couple of years. And I want to expand our service lines. Like we really just do day-to-day finance operations. We want to get into tax, and we want to get into more sort of CFO advisory to really be kind of the one-stop shop of sort of finance services for small business owners. And I think I'll kind of pick my head up from there and figure out, how do we want to continue to grow? Do I want to hire a GM and, spend my time somewhere else? But I know that like I have kind of that short term, let's double revenue again in the next couple of years while diversifying our service lines. And then I'll worry about longer term from there. As I think about my time, I want to make sure that like, I still get pulled down, I would say below the leadership level occasionally. I've got a client relationship, they're pissed off, I need to jump in. Like, I got to get rid of that stuff. And that I think just comes through growing a little bit because I want fewer fire drills that I basically need to touch, because that slows down my ability to work on kind of bigger projects, and some of that comes from, I need to better delegate. I need to stay out of the weeds myself more. There's probably a little bit of a micromanager that I'm guilty of. And then I think, as I think about myself in the business, like I'm very goal oriented. I'm very, I want to get to this thing of 10 million, and then I want to go from there. It's like, I need to find more peace along the journey for myself. I think I get so destination focused, and then I get concerned about whether or not we're going to hit that destination. Like we're not going to hit that destination this year, no matter what. So like, don't stress out so much, I think, about whether we're going to hit something that's a couple of years out, because it's kind of unknowable right this second. And I think that'll make me a better manager, a better husband, a better father, if I can sort of be a little bit more at peace, even though I still have along the way, even though I still have ambitions. And I think the last thing, like something I'm sorting through in real time is like, one of the benefits of owning a small business or any business is like, I control my calendar. I get to call my shots, which is great. When I have this morning, a bit of a meltdown at home, our daughter, and like more than usual for 5-week-old, and I like cancel a meeting to help out because my wife had a tough night. Like I love that flexibility, but also it means you're like, you decide how much you work. No one's telling you how much to work. And now that I have like a much more of a family at home that I want to spend time with, I think it's still like literally in process right now of just like, how much do I want to work? What's the structure I'm going to create for myself? And I think I need to build some sort of kind of like box for myself of when, how much, so that every day I'm not kind of deciding, should I work late tonight? When should I go home for dinner? Like build more structure around it. It's nice to have the freedom, but I need some structure.
Yeah, we'll save that topic for our next lunch. I can give you all the terrible advice I have around it, but I've been able to do that fairly successfully, even though I probably work way too many hours. But that's fine. Chris, throughout this whole conversation, you've spoken a lot about being people first, and it makes me think that you've got some great advice for people who are becoming leaders and their approach towards leadership. Can you share anything with us that would help us become better leaders?
Yeah, one phrase that I learned early on from somebody, again, private equity firm I worked at, everyone thinks private equity is the devil, like not always the case. the head of our group, guy's worth, $1 bazillion, super successful. He talked a lot about you should feel like you work with your boss, not for your boss. And, I know that, of course, there are times where, as a manager, people do kind of work for you. You have to overrule them, make a decision, etc. Like, yeah, that of course happens. But I think as much as possible as a leader, recognizing you're putting people in a position because you're asking them to do a job, and then it's your job to kind of try and help them be successful, whether that's with resources, additional hires, training, problem solving. Like, yeah, you're partnering with them to get something done so that you can have more time to go do other stuff yourself. So like recognizing that people who work, quote unquote, for you, under you, they enable you to have more time to do higher value stuff. So like in the time that you spend with them, how can you make them feel like you're a partner with them? How can you help them? And because in turn, that then gives you more sort of, they're more successful. That's going to create more capacity for you to do higher level stuff. So that's kind of my mentality. And then I think I already talked about one of the other big things, which is like, whatever the expectations you have of this person, whatever the job is that you're asking them to do, like make sure that's super, super clear. But I think trying to approach people who work for you and reframe it as you guys work together is going to enable a much more successful partnership.
Yeah, great. Build some relationship, build some trust. Those people will then want to work for you, which means you're working together towards the same goals, which I think is fantastic advice.
There's a trust well, right? There's a willingness to deal with chaos well. And it's like, you want to be able to ask your team to work late every once in a while. Like, you can't do that all the time. Gotta be partners so that when shit hits the fan and you need someone to step up, they're like willing to do that, as opposed to just like that being the consistent reality.
Yeah, that's great advice. Chris, you've shared a bit of personal stuff with us, but give us something interesting about you that we'll get to sort of get a better flavor of who you are.
Yeah. I was doing a little reflecting, you talked about earlier, I love running. I've kind of always been self-competitive. Like I played golf competitively growing up and still do. And so you think about like the physical activities I've done, they tend to be more individual oriented. And I think that, I played team sports too, like baseball growing up and loved that. But I do think, if you want to be the leader of a business, of course it's a team. You need people to support you, to work with you, but like you also got to be comfortable being alone. And I think I'm just reflecting in how I am comfortable. Like I hear a lot of small business owners that talk about being lonely. I like never feel that. And I think it's interesting because I kind of grew up with, that is sort of like, that was my athletic experiences, running, playing golf. And I think that's something I still enjoy. I love playing golf. I love playing by myself. It doesn't happen that much. I love to go on a run. And so, yeah, I do have this kind of comfort with being on my own that I think is really important to develop if you want to run a small business. I
think that's just great advice of being successful at life, but that's maybe just the introvert in me.
Yeah. And, other stuff is like, look, I'm very proud to live in California. I love it here. I've lived here for 11 years. It absolutely has its challenges, but I tell people, 40 million people live here for a reason. So I know that California gets bashed and I get it, but I always, I just feel super lucky the proximity we have to just beauty and the places I can drive in a couple hours and be outside. I live in Marin, not far from you. And it's like, I see Cam every day I go for a run. Like that's pretty unique. So really fortunate to be able to live here.
Yeah, the hills around me are pretty beautiful. Just looking out the window right now, and it looks like even though it's pretty cold out there, it's still a beautiful day.
Yeah, we have it pretty good. It's like cold for us is 55.
Exactly. Chris, one of the things we like to do to close out our product conversation is some rapid fire questions. If you're ready, I have 5 questions for you.
I'm excited. I'm a little nervous, but I'm excited.
Nothing too difficult. Let me know when you're ready, and we'll start with question 1.
Fire off.
What would your death row meal be?
Hamburger and French fries, but skinny French fries, not like thick ones. And they got to be like crispy. I mean, basically like cooked McDonald's fries, thin, salty, bring on the fat and grease.
Perfect. Do you prefer the mountains or the ocean?
Probably prefer the mountains. More activities. I'm not really good at like sitting on the beach and reading.
Fair enough. What is the quality you appreciate in a good friend?
I think where like you don't feel like you can go a long time without talking to them and not feeling like any different, or and kind of no expectation that like, oh, you're mad at me that I didn't call you. Like like we're all young and busy. We've all got young families. Like,
yeah.
It's hard to be on a consistent cadence. But the ones that I know I could go, 6 months without talking to and text them and be like, hey, I need to talk to you tomorrow. That's true friendship.
I love that. What is your favorite piece of technology that makes your life better?
Good question. I mean, it's like hard to take it. We're doing a lot of dishes right now. We've got a newborn, and we have a bottle washer, and she's doing a lot of formula because breastfeeding's been a challenge. Mm-hmm. So the formula machine and the bottle washer, those at 2 a.m. make our lives a lot easier.
Absolutely love it. Last question. Yeah. Do you have a favorite book that you recommend everybody reads?
Yeah, I mean, only because we're kind of going through the implementation of it right now. This is nerdy and not that exciting, but Traction and any of the kind of EOS books, I think Traction's really compelling. So that's the first one that comes to mind. I wish I was reading a lot of fun leisure books right now, but I think my mind's. The other book I'm reading right now is 12 Hours of Sleep by 12 Weeks, which is baby sleep. So you can see where my head's at these days. Baby, I'm trying to grow this.
That is a great book for new parents, so go and read that as well. Chris, I really appreciate your time today on Protea Conversations. Thank you for being a guest.
Thanks for having me, Zane, and thanks for all the friendship. Looking forward to our next lunch.
And with that, we ended another Protea Conversations. Thank you for joining us in this journey of learning and inspiration. Today we've gained insight from our guests and taken another step towards understanding the diverse tapestry of leadership in business and accounting. Remember, each conversation is a step towards the positive transformation of business leaders. We hope our discussion has given you valuable takeaways to apply in your own career and life. Don't forget to subscribe to Protea Conversations on YouTube and Spotify so you never miss an episode. We'd also love to hear your thoughts and experiences, so connect with me on social media channels. I'm most active on LinkedIn and would love you to join the conversation. Join us next time for more engaging stories, advice,